Welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, helping you prepare for the PMP exam. Here's your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner.
Hello and welcome to the Project Management Prepcast. Let's explore developing a project management plan, as you probably also develop your PMP exam study plan here. I'm your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner. Yes, the project management plan, focus of this lesson here, is one of the primary documents on your project, and the process we're going to take a look at develops it. It's part of integration management, so we must think big picture. We're going to be discussing the project management plan, its purpose, and why it is the project's comprehensive plan. We're also going to take a look at how the plan is made up, what it comprises, and the concept of progressive elaboration. We'll look at all the aspects that make up the process of developing the project management plan, what tailoring means and adopting the plan to the needs of the project and the organization and how that works. And we'll be wrapping it up with how this project document fits with other project documents. We begin with our usual overview of the knowledge area, the processes and the process groups, and let's start out with the definition of the knowledge area. So, project integration management includes the processes and activities that are needed to identify, define, combine, unify, and coordinate the various processes and project management activities within the project management process groups. The knowledge area has 6 processes, and you have probably already watched our lesson on Develop Project Charter, which is the process of developing a document, the project charter, that formally authorizes the existence of a project and provides the project manager with the authority to apply organizational resources to project activities. You are named in this document. You get the authority to apply resources in this charter to your project. And of course, the first thing you're going to do is not to do work and actually work on the final product of the project, but you're going to plan. In particular, you're going to move on to the next process, or rather large group of processes, all the planning processes. You move on to develop project management plan. Focus of our lesson here. This is the process of defining, preparing, and coordinating all subsidiary plans and integrating them into a comprehensive project management plan. Sounds rather simple and rather short when you look at it from this point of view, but it is a humongous activity, a humongous process before you can move on to the next step, which is actually doing the work in direct in manage project work, the process of leading and performing the work defined in the project management plan and implementing approved changes to achieve the project's objective. And as the work is going on, you also want to make sure that we're still on track, that we're still following the plan in the process of monitor and control project work. That's the process of tracking, reviewing, and reporting the progress to meet the performance objectives defined in the project management plan, which our current process here is creating. Then we will always have customers who say, oh, I'd like to change something, so we have to have the integrated change control, and the process is called Perform Integrated Change Control. That's the process of reviewing all change requests, approving changes, and managing changes to deliverables, organizational process assets, project documents, and the project management plan, and communicating their disposition. And finally, once we are getting close to the end, we have to close project or phase. That's the process of finalizing all activities across all of the project management process groups to formally complete a project or phase. So in the previous lesson, we looked at how to develop the project charter, and in this lesson right here, we'll look at how to develop the project management plan. It is the only process from this knowledge area that is in the planning process group. And by the way, we plan absolutely everything through this process. So the next process is direct and manage project work. In Develop Project Management Plan, we plan how we direct and manage project work. We plan how we will be monitoring and controlling the project work. We plan how we will perform the integrated change control, and we even plan how we will close the project or phase once we get to it. So develop project management plan means you plan everything on the project. The main concept that you have to understand in developing your comprehensive project management plan is to integrate the whole of all subsidiary plans and other planning artifacts. You define all the actions that are needed to execute these plans. By extension, this means once the project management plan is established, including the details of what and how things are to be executed, it is approved and controlled via change control. That process, the Perform Integrated Change Control process, we're going to discuss that later on here in the Integration Management Knowledge Area lessons, but simply put, Perform Integrated Change Control defines how changes to your project are documented, approved, and implemented. Nonetheless, the project management plan is a living document that will progressively be elaborated as the project moves forward. The plans are updated and modified as more or new information becomes available. Before we move on in the process, there is one overarching term that I have just used and that you need to be aware of. It is progressive elaboration, because we certainly realize that plans grow, plans evolve, plans elaborate and grow with constant nurturing and effort. Progressive elaboration is the project management term used to describe the iterative nature of plans as they are becoming more detailed and more accurate and current as more or new information is gathered or learned or considered. Knowledge builds on knowledge. Keep this in mind as we go through this process as well as other knowledge areas. Let's start out by making a statement that you may have heard me say before or will hear me say again throughout the lessons here on the Prepcast, and that is your project management plan is not your project schedule. The project schedule centers around the project's timeline. And in many companies, the term project schedule and project management plan are used interchangeably because so many companies, they don't actually have a formal project management plan. They may have a vision document, business plans, infrastructure plans, risk management plans, business continuity plans, or user acceptance test plans. But these documents, they're all separate documents and they are never pulled together and brought into one overarching project management plan. All the documentation may exist, but they don't call it the project management plan. Instead, when they talk about the project management plan, they are only referring to the project schedule, but not so for the PMP exam. So, to avoid confusion, for the PMP exam, the project schedule describes your project's timeline, and the project management plan is a formal, approved document that describes how the project is planned, executed, and controlled. To see the big picture of this process, let's take a closer look here at figure 4-4 from the PMBOK Guide, the official ITTO figure from the guide. So, to develop the project management plan, or integrated master plan, if you want to think of it that way, the process here takes the outputs from all the other planning processes, as well as our project charter with which we initiated the project. We'll add enterprise environmental factors on top of that. We add organizational process assets on top of that. And we run our tools and techniques against those. And then as an output, wait for it, we have the project management plan. I bet you would never have guessed that, right? How this is pulled together is done by the facilitation techniques and the expert judgment there as tools and techniques. Okay, so much for the big picture. Let's discuss all of this in greater detail and with some supporting information. To develop the project management plan, we need the following inputs. All the outputs from all the other planning processes across the knowledge areas, because essentially we are creating a comprehensive plan of plans, and that must all be pulled from somewhere, right? The project charter gives us the high-level boundaries and project purpose. And how the plan is developed is influenced by the enterprise environmental factors and your surroundings, as well as the organizational process assets that are being used. Let's see a few more examples of each to give some more depth and clarity to these inputs here. The largest and therefore definitely also the most important input to this process are the outputs from other processes. What is meant by this is, of course, that the various planning processes from cost planning, time planning, scope planning, and all the other knowledge areas are going to produce documents that we can use as the basis for creating the project management plan. For example, the baselines like cost, scope, and quality baselines, plans from the other knowledge areas like the scope management plan or the quality management plan, updates and modifications based on recent developments or formally requested changes. Then we have requirements documents and a requirements traceability matrix, for example. And of course, then we get into the stakeholder registry, strategies that you may be having, etc., etc. All of these and more go into the project management plan. The project charter is our second major input that the PMBOK guide mentions. Considering that the charter sets the project in motion, it also sets the planning into motion. The project charter proclaims the boundaries that our project has at a very, very high level, as well as the objectives of the project. Setting the tone, the purpose, and the limits of the project certainly must feed into how the project management plan is to be developed. And the final two inputs are the broad classifications of enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets. With enterprise environmental factors, we are referring to the surroundings and the world we live in, or more precisely, the world the project must work within. So things like the governmental or industry or company standards, cultures and approaches to risk or conflict, handling personnel administration, and much more influences how we develop the project management plan. Likewise, the organizational process assets are at our disposal, and they influence things like our change control procedures, templates, historical information, lessons learned, and knowledge that is encapsulated in the corporate knowledge base, to name just a few examples of how the organizational process assets will influence the development of our project management plan. The tools and techniques for this process are fairly straightforward. There are more difficult tools and techniques waiting for you in the other processes, but right now, here in this process, we have two, relatively simple ones: expert judgment and the experiences of good practices of project managers, and also facilitation techniques. And by facilitation technique in this particular process, we are talking about the techniques that are used in developing the project management plan together with your team, like conflict resolution, brainstorming, the way that meetings are run, your interpersonal skills, and also how decisions are made, to name just a few. So we talk about how to bring the plans together and how to facilitate all the work that is associated with it. The term facilitation is a broad application of the manner in which you conduct the direction and flow of the project that you are managing. And going back to the expert judgment, one of the areas that an expert can help you in is when it comes to tailoring the project management plan. Because the project management methodology, the system of how you're going to run your project, those are going to be part of the project management plan. It is usually a formally documented system on how your company manages a project. How you make it fit and appropriate for your project is where your expertise comes in. This is where you tailor. And here's what tailoring means in an example from my own work as a project manager. The project management methodology that one of my former companies uses is part of a project management system. There are about 50 templates in this methodology, and the empty templates, I'm saying the empty templates, when you print them out, are about 400 pages long. Not every project needs all 50 templates, and we don't use every single chapter in every template. That is why we tailor the system to our project. Select and rationalize and make it best fit the needs and the complexity of your project. So, in my example, we used tools to record our time and attendance. In the project management plan, we defined which parts of this tool were to be used and how they were going to be used on our specific project. We pick and choose parts, the processes, the levels of implementation, and techniques that are best suited for the project. We document this finally in our project management plan, and of course this tailoring takes expertise. Okay, no surprise here. If the process is called Develop Project Management Plan, then it's a no-brainer that the output is, of course, the Project Management Plan. But let's discuss more of what is contained, typically, in this output. Your project management plan is a consolidation of all the subsidiary plans from all the knowledge areas. So that would be your schedule management plan, scope management plan, quality management plan, etc. We also include the baselines, the scope, schedule, cost baselines, but also the plans and descriptions on how integrity of those baselines are to be maintained. As mentioned earlier about tailoring the plans to the needs of the project, details about the decisions and usage of that tailoring would be included in the plan as well. Configuration plans explaining the configuration management method and how it will be performed are included, and we also include process improvement plans. These are just a few examples to help you conceptualize what is involved. And going back to the statement that we made in the opening of this presentation, as you can tell, your project management plan is definitely more than just a project schedule. The project management plan is one of the primary, if not the most important document on your project, but there are other project documents as well. For example, activity lists and estimates, seller proposals and other documents from procurement management, agreements both from internal and external partners, forecasts, team performance information and other assessments, and other necessary project artifacts. For clarity, the project management plan includes all those components that we mentioned previously. These other project documents here, they are used in coordination with the project management plan and help you execute the project. Let's review. The Develop Project Management Plan takes the results of other planning processes and puts them together into a consistent, coherent document that we call the Project Management Plan that can be used to guide both project execution and project control. This document contains the project management processes that have been selected by the project management team, the descriptions of the tools and techniques that are to be used for accomplishing those processes, and how the selected processes will be used to manage this specific project here at hand. What we achieve by developing a project management plan is this. We get an overall plan to accomplish the project objectives. We get consolidation of subsidiary plans from other planning processes in cost, scheduling, scope, risk, and so on. And we get other plans and documents that we need for all of this coordination. And this concludes our look at the Develop Project Management Plan process. So, what type of questions do we see in sample tests online or in books? Well, not difficult to guess that questions on this process here focus very much on the project management plan itself. And this here is the easiest question that we have found, or rather the simplest question you can ask. What is the project management plan? But the answers will get you, because as answers they gave the definition of the project management plan, the definition of the charter, that of the scope statement, and that of the work breakdown structure. So to answer this question correctly, you needed to know the exact definition of what is the project management plan. And the correct definition is, of course, this here. The project management plan is a formal, approved document that defines how the project is executed, monitored, and controlled. It may be a summary or detail and may be composed of one or more subsidiary management plans and other planning documents. Don't forget that it can be high level or detailed, and that it usually integrates all of its subsidiary plans, even though it says may here. You should also know the difference between the various subsidiary plans, like the scope, cost, quality, or schedule management plans. Knowing that they are part of the project management plan and what they contain is imperative. The project management plan is also an input to many other processes, and as a result you may find it often as an answer to questions. And one scenario-based question that we saw was this here. You have just been assigned as project manager to an ongoing project. What should you do first? One correct answer could be that you should read the project documentation, which of course includes the project management plan. A similar question had the same premise, namely that here you have just been assigned to an ongoing project. What should you do first to learn more about the project team? And the answer here is that you should read the team member roles and responsibilities in the project management plan. Before we go, here is a quick PMP exam study tip for you, and that is simply implement what you have learned on the job. As you are preparing for the PMP exam, you will come across new processes, new tools and techniques, and new best practices. Well, go ahead, use them in your daily work. We humans learn quite well by listening, reading, or watching, but we learn best by actually doing something. The more you utilize the principles of the PMBOK Guide on your projects, the better prepared you will be for your PMP exam. And with that, we have come to the end of this lesson. So it's time for Justine to say,
Till we meet again.
and I say, until next time.